Imagine being present at an autopsy, watching a doctor slowly open the skin of a corpse and trying to paint that exact moment with almost photographic precision. It sounds completely insane, and yet Rembrandt did it. When Rembrandt painted what is now the most famous dissection in the history of art, a lot was at stake for him. He was only 26 years old, had just arrived in Amsterdam, and was determined to make a name for himself in what was, at the time, one of the richest cities in Europe. The pressure was even greater when you consider that public dissections were only allowed once a year. The Amsterdam Guild of Surgeons organized this annual event and occasionally commissioned a painting to immortalize the moment. That meant that if Rembrandt failed with this commission, he would probably never get another opportunity to prove his talent in a scene like this. This was his first major commission, and his task with this painting was to depict a freshly dissected corpse surrounded by several surgeons who carefully observed the anatomical demonstration. In the end, the result became one of the most striking works of his early career, and today it is known as the Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp. But the question still remains: how should we really interpret this painting? Is it simply a celebration of scientific progress, a macabre scene born from human curiosity, or something far more profound? If we take a closer look at the painting, on the left side of the body we see the anatomist Dr. Nicolaes Tulp, the man who is leading the dissection. Using a pair of forceps, he carefully lifts the skin of the arm and hand of the corpse to reveal the tendons that control the movement of the fingers. In doing so, he is explaining to the spectators how the mechanism of the human hand actually works. The event represented in the painting can be dated quite precisely, January 31st, 1632. In Amsterdam, these public dissections were usually held during winter, since the cold helped slow down the decomposition of the body and reduce the smell. These demonstrations were also open to the public for an admission fee, and they could attract hundreds of spectators gathered in amphitheater-style rooms. However, Rembrandt's painting was not a large public mural. It was a relatively small work that was probably displayed in the dissection room of the Waag building in Amsterdam. It is very likely that the men portrayed in the painting paid to be included, since group portraits like this were also a way of displaying social prestige. Among them, Dr. Nicolaes Tulp clearly stands out. He was the official lecturer of the Amsterdam Guild of Surgeons, essentially the professor responsible for delivering these anatomical lessons. Rembrandt portrays him seated with an air of authority, and he is also the only figure wearing a hat, which visually reinforces his status within the scene. Tulp holds a pair of forceps with which he lifts the flexor digitorum superficialis, a muscle in the forearm that divides into 4 separate tendons. When these tendons contract, they allow the middle joints of the fingers to bend. At the same time, with his other hand, the doctor bends his own fingers, visually demonstrating the exact movement that these tendons produce. The way Rembrandt paints the hand is especially remarkable. He likely consulted anatomical books, which was common practice to ensure scientific accuracy. But Rembrandt's real talent was not just precision, it was his ability to use light, color, and composition to turn this dissected hand into the visual center of the entire scene. Focusing on the hand was not a typical choice. In many anatomy lessons, the main focus would have been the thoracic cavity and the chest, since that part of the body decomposes the fastest and had to be examined first. The decision to highlight the hand may also carry symbolic meaning. It is possible that Dr. Tulp himself influenced this choice. As a deeply religious man, he may have seen the complexity of the human hand as a demonstration of the wisdom and perfection of divine design. After all, the hand is the part of the body that allows us to write, build, paint, or play music. In fact, during the 17th century, many thinkers considered the human hand to be the clearest proof of God's design in the body. Influenced by classical physicians such as Galen and Andreas Vesalius, some theologians describe the hand as the instrument of instruments. These ideas fit perfectly with the mentality of Calvinist countries such as the Dutch Republic at that time. There, studying the human body was not seen as something that contradicted religion, but rather as a way to better understand the work of the Creator. As for the corpse shown in the painting, historical research has managed to identify him. The body being dissected belongs to Adrian Adrians, a minor criminal who used the alias Aris Kint. His profession was tube maker, a common craft at the time, and he was 28 years old when he was arrested. According to historical records, Kint was detained after violently attacking a man while attempting to steal an expensive cloak. After his arrest, he was interrogated following the methods of the 17th century judicial system, which were extremely harsh. He was whipped, branded with a hot iron, and subjected to torture in order to obtain a confession quickly. Once convicted, Kint was sentenced to death by hanging. This type of execution typically caused the neck to break while also leading to suffocation. Because of this, it is very likely that the dissection represented in the painting took place on the same day as his execution, which was quite common at the time. It is also important to understand that in the 17th century, there was a strict practice regarding anatomical lessons. Only the bodies of executed criminals could be used for public dissections. This means that only a few hours after his death, Kint's body would have been delivered to the Amsterdam Guild of Surgeons to serve as the subject of this public demonstration. There is also a very striking detail in the painting. Rembrandt chose to center the entire scene around the hand of the corpse, the very part of the body with which Kint committed his crime. The hand that once carried out an act of violence now becomes, in front of the surgeons, the main object of scientific study. When Rembrandt painted this work, anatomical portraiture was still a very new genre in painting. Earlier works of this kind tended to be much more rigid and formal, with highly ordered compositions and little interest in drama or storytelling. A good example is one of the few anatomical paintings that existed before Rembrandt, a work by Aert Peters, commissioned by the surgeons of Amsterdam in 1601. In that painting, the members of the guild gather around a dissection table while Dr. Sebastian Egbert prepares to begin the lesson. The scene clearly follows the model of 16th century group portraits of guilds and civic guards. In these paintings, members of an organization would pose together to display their social status. They usually appeared seated around a banquet table, but in this case, the banquet has simply been replaced by an anatomy lesson. Even so, the goal remained the same, to show each member of the group clearly and recognizably. That is why almost all the figures look directly toward the viewer, as if posing for a traditional portrait. Meanwhile, the corpse lies almost hidden on the table, which makes it clear that what mattered most to the men portrayed was their own likeness, not the body being studied. With Rembrandt's painting, everything changes. The scene becomes far more dynamic and complex. Instead of a simple row of portraits, Rembrandt creates a subtle tension across the canvas, where light, glances, and facial expressions become just as important as the accurate depiction of the surgeons. One of the most striking differences is that the corpse of Aris Kint occupies a central place in the painting. It is not hidden or pushed into the background. On the contrary, it becomes one of the main focal points of the scene. Art historian Dolores Mitchell has pointed out that even details such as the rough beard covering the corpse's upper lip and chin suggest his low social status. Yet Rembrandt seems to suggest something deeper. Even the body of a criminal can serve a noble purpose, the advancement of scientific knowledge. This may explain why Rembrandt chose to soften or remove the marks that would likely have been visible on the body after the execution, such as scars, bruises, or signs of violence. In doing so, the corpse stops being simply the body of an executed criminal and instead becomes a subject of study with a certain dignity, part of a process of learning and discovery. The hand that once took part in a criminal act now serves another role: to teach, to demonstrate, and to expand human knowledge. Today, thanks to its innovative composition, psychological intensity, and the philosophical questions it raises about science, death, and human nature, the anatomy lesson of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp is considered one of Rembrandt's greatest masterpieces. Thank you for watching the video until the end. I would love to read your thoughts about this painting in the comments. I'd also like to remind you that If you'd like to have this painting in your own collection, it is now available in our catalogue. The video you are watching is an example of how you can turn your home into your own personal museum with our reproductions. You can also get a phone case and carry a masterpiece with you wherever you go while protecting your phone. Shipping is free worldwide, and by purchasing from the store, you will be supporting me greatly and helping me continue creating more videos like this. I'll leave the link in the description so you can place your order. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.